This is Jeff Badge of the Grinding Doc, and I am continuing my series on the great academic papers of Stephen Malkin, world grinding guru, passed away a few years ago. And in my opinion, the one researcher who's done the best work, the most comprehensive work, would be Stephen Malkin. Some people may take offense at that and say, no, my work was the best. But collectively, as a whole body of work, I would say Malkin's papers were the best. Or at least Malkin contributed the most to our understanding of grinding. Doesn't mean a lot of others haven't done some fabulous work. Doesn't mean Malkin didn't write a few mediocre papers, but overall Malkin's papers were fabulous in contributing to our understanding, and he had a very good approach to things because number one, his experimental approach was good. Number two, he always broke things down to first principles. He didn't just do a bunch of experiments and say, hey, man, here's what happened. He did a bunch of experiments, and then he explained why, basically from fundamental laws of physics, Newton's laws of motion, fundamentals of heat transfer, fundamentals of fluid mechanics, F equals ma, conduction, whatever it is, for fundamental material science too. He broke it down to first principles. So this is going to be another paper we're going to talk about. This will be one of his probably lesser well-known papers. He doesn't really get into fluids very much either in most of his work, but here he does, and I think it's fabulous, and it gives us basically an understanding of what's the difference between water and oil in grinding. And what you'll see a lot is, oil lubricates well and water cools well. Sort of, but not really. Mostly it's lubrication. Oil is a fabulous lubricant, number one, and Malkin showed that here. And then number two is oil doles the grits, at least the aluminum oxide grits, far less slowly. Doesn't really dole. Let's rephrase that. Doling of the grits occurs far more slowly if you use oil than if you use water. And so here we can see both those concepts. Oil is the little circles down below. And you will see this in my book of grinding. I take it and I make it a little pretty with red, yellow, and blue curves, but it's the same curve where we have the horizontal force, or if you want, you can think of it in terms of the heat generation. They're the same. And then you have the tangential force, and it would be nice to plot normal force versus tangential force because as the grits become dull, the ratio of normal force to tangential force grows exponentially. But here we can see that oil is lubricating fabulously. Water is lubricating okay, or at least water-based coolants, I should say. And then air isn't lubricating very well. That's number one. And then oil is lubricating a hell of a lot better, or somewhat better, than water-based coolants. And I think this was an emulsion, so it did have an oil component in it. At least I assume it was an emulsion. Whatever it was, okay? Yes, it was, because you have soluble oil there, so it was an emulsion. So we're getting some lubrication from the oil, but not near as much as if we have 100% neat oil with no water in it. And then another important observation is the oil coolant is just slowing down the dulling of the grits, okay? And here we have something, he measures in wear flat area. This is what he did in his Ph.D. thesis, wear flat area, fundamental. We could skip measuring wear flat area. I've never measured wear flat area in my experiments. I just measure forces or power, and then I assume the wear flat area is getting bigger. Because wear flat area is difficult to measure, but Malkin measures wear flat area, which is fabulous if we can do it. This is an older one he pulls from his Ph.D. work where forces go up and then you get burned, then you get catastrophic. And then he does some other stuff. Specific energies are good. I like specific energies more than power and more than forces even, because that tells us a lot, relatively speaking. And we can compare it to other tests. And then he's got some shear stress going on, so that's lubrication. And then wear flat area burn is good. And this will kind of tell us a little bit about the heat sucking capability of the fluids too, which is interesting. That's pretty good. Yes, see, this is all very thorough stuff because you can say, okay, well, oil is lubricating better, So it's giving us lower forces in heat generation, and it's slowing down the rate of attritious wear. So that means the forces in heat generation are growing more slowly. However, oil doesn't suck away heat quite as well as water does. And how does that factor in? And then we've got friction coefficient, good. Passes to burn. Yeah, that's a good one. So how long can we go before we burn the workpiece? Oil was the clear winner at both wheel speeds. Very, very good. And some people will say, oh no, you'll get less burn with water because it sucks away heat better. You say, no, man, the facts are the facts in terms of when you start measuring stuff. And you can go a hell of a lot longer with oil before you burn the workpiece. Did G ratio wheel wear? Of course, you should do G ratio. Which one's going to give us less wheel wear? Oil gives us the least wheel wear. And surface finish, you got to do surface finish too, at least you should. And then we can see there's not that big of a difference between the different coolants. Oil gives a little bit better surface finish, it looks like, or about the same really as water and oil. And then we have the grinding flux at burn, very good. That'll help us out with the heat conduction abilities of water versus oil, and just all good stuff in terms of giving us a better understanding. And I think probably the best one for me, just taking a glance at it, we could kill air because very seldom do we grind without any coolant. So cutting oil versus soluble oil right there. This graph tells us a huge amount and says, hey, oil lubricates better, number one. And number two, it slows down the doling of the grits, which you may not have supposed. I wouldn't necessarily suppose that to be true, but there it is. So that's it. This is Jeff Badger talking about the great papers of Stephen Malkin. And this one's from 1972. So this would have been pretty early on in his career when he was at the University of Texas at Austin, the Texas Longhorns, my alma mater. And this is one of his first tests as a professor. Stephen Malkin, grinding great. And we're going through his great papers. This is Jeff Badger, the Grinding Doc.